Ready.
Is he ready? I should start? Okay. Good morning, Moray Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are holding on Daf Tet Vav Amud Bet, 2 lines from the bottom of the Amud. The Limud of Amud Yomi has been sponsored for Chodesh Iyar, for Hatzlacha of Yeshua ben Dina Diana and Yael bat Rivka, also by Shaban Rabbi for health, happiness, and prosperity of their family. We are in the middle of still discussing the 4 that entered the Pardes. We spoke about Ben Azai, we spoke about Ben Zuma, we spoke about Elisha ben Abuya, who became Acher, and now we start discussing Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, says the Gemara, he was the only one that was nichnas l'shalom ve'yatza b'shalom. The language of the Gemara, this is language of En Yaakov, which everyone uses. The nichnas l'shalom ve'yatza b'shalom. Our Gemara uses the language of ala b'shalom ve'yarad b'shalom. Ve'alav ha'katuv omer, on him the pasuk says, Moshcheni acharecha narutza, hevi'ani hamelech chadarav nagira v'nispecha bach, that he was the one that was drawn after Hashem, and he came to the inner chambers of the Kedusha, but at the same time, he did not supersede, he did not go further to the level that would be dangerous. In other words, he accomplished what was humanly possible and able for him to accomplish, to see and to experience the utmost level that a human being could reach, but then he did not go further than that. That would be dangerous. And therefore he was nichnas b'shalom, ala b'shalom, and yarad b'shalom. We mentioned before the Gemara in Masechet Menachot Daf Chavtet that says Moshe Rabbeinu even had envied the level of Rabbi Akiva in Pratiyut Torah, like the Maral in his Sefer. He has in Perek Samech Gimel, he has a tremendous essay, a short one, on that Gemara in Masechet Menachot, and he says that the neshama of Rabbi Akiva was mitzat Pratiyut Torah, and therefore he had tilim shel halachot. He could darshin and see truckloads of halachot on every kutz of the Torah, and every tag of the Torah, a tremendous level of Rabbi Akiva, and that was, of course, achieved because of his nichdas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. So says the Gemara, even Rabbi Akiva bikshu malachei ashar ededochvo. Even Rabbi Akiva, the malachim wanted to push him away because he used the Shemot HaKodesh. The Ramchal writes that a person that uses the Shemot HaKodesh, the Kabbalah Ma'asit and others, they will be damaged from that. It's a very dangerous endeavor. So even Rabbi Akiva, the Malachim wanted to harm him, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them, Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hanichu lezaken zeh sheraui leishtamesh b'chvodi. Leave this zaken because he is fit to be using the Shemot HaKodesh to use my kavod. So we mentioned before that, as we had before, one of the reasons that Ben Azai and Ben Zuma were pushed away, one of them died, one of them went crazy, was because they were not perhaps zaken, they were not old enough, right, still in Lagaon. And here, Rabbi Akiva, the language that Hashem used on him is zaken ze. He was zaken, he was old enough and respectful enough, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu prevented him from being damaged by the Malachim. My darash. Now the Gemara asks, what did Rabbi Akiva darshin? How did he know where not to look? So we had a problem by Ben Zuma and Ben Azai. They were metzitz. They looked at something they were not supposed to look. And Elisha Acher, he interpreted what he saw in a wrong way. So how did Rabbi Akiva know what not to look at, not to gaze ad mar'eh hashchina. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabba bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Because you see from the pasuk, it says ve'ata mirivavot kodesh, and ve'ata, the language is HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes from rivavot kodesh. Ata is the language of ot. Ot means a sign. That means that there is a sign in the structure of the malachim up there, indicating where Hashem, where the makom of Shekhinah is, and therefore he knew where not to look. Says the Gemara, Ot hu berivavot shelo, there is a sign in the rivavot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, indicating the makom of the Shekhinah, and therefore he knew not to look there. But Rabbi Abahu Amar, there's multiple different drashot that the Gemara suggests how a person could have known without having experienced this priorly. So it says Rabbi Abahu Amar, Dagul mirvava, and Dagul mirvava, again describing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a language of dugmahu bervava shelo. That Hashem is a dugma, is an example that something that's different that you could show and say, this is what I want. That's something that stands out. So the way it's structured, again, you see from this pasuk, is in a way that you would know where to expect HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod to be residing, and therefore he knew not to look. The Rish Lakish Amar, third attempt at the Gemara, Hashem tzvakot shemo adonu betzava shelo. When he says Hashem tzvakot, it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his tzava is an army. When he's talking about up above, of course, that our language is army, but it means the entourage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he is, you could tell that he is the king and the rest of them are the entourage. So therefore, again, a certain indication that could be understood, and that's how Rabbi Akiva knew not to look. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. We know this from a pasuk, from the experience of Eliyahu Navi experiencing HaKadosh Baruch. Now, what's the story? The story of it is a post-Hara Carmel story. So everyone knows the debate between Eliyahu Navi and Achav, right? Achav was a king that was Rasha. His wife was even a greater Rasha than he was. She slaughtered literally all the Nevi'ei Hashem, and they enforced Avodah Zarah, spread Avodah Zarah throughout the land of Eretz Yisrael. And then they had a debate at a certain funeral that, this is the cousin of Achav had built Yericho, where Yeshua had cursed that they should not be built. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Eliyahu Navi, says, go to the funeral of his son, because Yeshua had cursed that anyone that tries to rebuild Yericho, right, the first day that he starts building it, his firstborn will die, and he will lose all of his children in the process, and the last day that he establishes the gateways and the doors of the city, he will lose his last child, right? And this guy actually did it, and all of those things happened to him. He lost all those children exactly in that order, and he still did it. Imagine the Resha, the level of Resha. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, he says, go to the funeral of the last child. He says, Hashem, if I go there, it's going to be, Achav is going to be there. You're going to get into trouble. I'm a zealous guy. Kanais go. So he goes there, and Achav, of course, instigated him. Achav said, so tell me something. It was Moshe Rabbeinu greater, or was Yeshua greater? So of course, Moshe Rabbeinu was greater. He says, no, you're not right. Yeshua is much greater, because Yeshua said this curse, and look, exactly it happened. What Moshe said in his Torah, it says, if you do Avodah Zarah, there won't be any rain, any dew, and I'm here, Chai v'Kayam, standing here, I'm promoting Avodah Zarah, and we have rain, we have everything. So that's the wrong thing to say to Eliyahu Navi when he's a Kanai. So he said, oh, rain. From this moment until I say there will not be a drop of dew, rain, nothing. And for 3 years, there was nothing. And he went into his hiding, and Achav is sending everyone to every country and every neighboring city and country to find Eliyahu Hanavi. Nothing. And it's, of course, a drought, a famine. It's a horrible situation. At some point, Hashem tells him, okay, Lech Hidrael Achav, go show yourself to Achav. And we have the public debate in between the two of them and the 400 Nevi'eh Baal, that the false prophets that Izebel and Achav kept to themselves on top of Mount Carmel. And of course, the Nevi'eh Baal, they tried, tricking the system, and it didn't work. And Eliyahu Hanavi brought the Korban, and it was consumed in a super miraculous way. Not only the fire came from heaven in front of the eyes of all the Klal Yisrael and consumed the Korban, but he also consumed the wood, and it consumed the entire hundreds of gallons of water that was around it. It was a massive mess, and everyone fell on their faces, and they said the all-time famous Pesukim, Hashem wa Elokim, Hashem wa Elokim, and they went and they shachted all the Nevi'eh Baal, right? So what happened was, Izebel sends that day a message to Eliyahu, unimpressed. She says, Machar asim nafshecha tachat nefesh achad mehem. I'm going to kill you tomorrow, and nobody is going to say boo. I'm going to kill you. So Eliyahu Hanavi was very taken aback, and he goes for, it's a very interesting experience that he has, and finally he ends up in this me'ara, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu directly speaks with him. He actually has an experience like Moshe Rabbeinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him some sort of food, ugat retzafim, and he walks for 40 days, 40 nights, like Moshe Rabbeinu, not eating, not drinking, and then he finds himself on this mountain in the Me'ara, in a cave inside the mountain, and he has experience with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem speaks to him. And the way it's described is this pasuk here. That first there was tremendous wind, strong wind, hurricane type wind. And it says, Lo beruach Hashem. Hashem was not in the ruach. Then it was fireworks, fire and thunders. Lo bera'ash Hashem was not in the thunder. It was not in the earthquake. It was not in the fire. It was not in the ruach. And then afterwards was a call the mamatakai, soft, very low tone voice. And that was the indication of HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking with him. Now, it's very interesting. The Malbim writes something so fascinating over there. The Malbim writes that this was Hashem giving him a little musar. Hashem was telling him, like, you're zealous, but that's not the way, that's not the way to deal with the tzibur. You can't be like berash and in fire and in thunder and in earthquake. You can't deal with people like that. You have to calm down a little bit. Because Hashem comes and asks him, says, where are you? Where are you coming from, Eliyahu? And he says, I am kanokineti Hashem. I'm zealous because they have left and forsaken your brit, your covenant, blah, blah, blah. And Hashem shows him all these things. And then it says, asks him again the question, says, where you go? And it's just the same answer. So Hashem says, okay, fine, you're not willing, you're not able to control that nature that you have to resign. So he basically tells him, you have to appoint Elisha, your disciple, your student, instead of yourself. And then it led to the story, the all-time famous story of Eliyahu Hanavi departing with the fiery chariots alive to Shamayim, that everyone knows. That's post-factor to this story. But the experience he had in this world was this experience of speaking directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu after this element. So all of these elements exist. There is Esh, there is Ruach, there is Rash, there are all of those things, but Hashem is now there. Kol Dmama Daka, that's where Hashem is. So says the Gemara, that's how Rabbi Akiva knew, because up there also, this experience of Eliyahu Hanavi was the experience of the entourage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you see this, by the way, from the Gemara, by Rav Sheshet as well, that he was blind and he yet knew where the king comes and so on, because he said that entourage of Melech down here is a replica of the entourage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and so on. So you see that the experience of Eliyahu Hanavi was not just something that Eliyahu Hanavi experienced, it is the order of the Tzvak Hashamayim, the Tzva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and hence The Gemara says that's how Rabbi Akiva knew where not to look. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo beruach Hashem, the Hashem is not in the Ruach, ve'achar ruach ra'ash, and after Ruach was a Ra'ash, and Lo bera'ash Hashem, achar ra'ash, esh, lo be'esh Hashem, ve'achar ha'esh, kol demamad daka, ve'hineh Hashem over. After the kol demamad daka is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu passes, and that's how Rabbi Akiva knew where not to look. Tanu Rabbanan. Shishat dvarim nemru b'shedim. Now we mentioned that we're going to speak about shedim. Here we are. There are six things that are said about the shedim. Shelosha kemalachei hasharet, shelosha kibnei adam. They share three properties, three different elements of their existence with the malachim, and three of them with bnei adam, with human. Says the Gemara, what are the three like malachim? Shelosha kemalachei hasharet. Yesh lahem kerafayim. They have the ability to travel. We call it knafayim, like malachei hasharet. That's, they don't have to walk like us. They could go from one end to the other end of the world, like malachei hasharet. V'tasin misof ha'olam v'ad sofo k'malachei hasharet. This the Mefarshim say it doesn't mean that they fly. That we know from the first one. It means that they could live in climates, in places all over the world, unlike human beings that we can't go to North Pole or South Pole. Actually, the Ramban writes that the main place that the Shedim hang out is places that we don't go, really. It's the Midbarot, and he also says in the North Pole and the South Pole. This is a Ramban actually upcoming in Perek Yud Zayin of Vayikra. That's where the Ramban speaks about the nature and the habits and the habitats of the Shedim. That's Malachei Hasharet as well. V'yodin ma she'atid liyod, and they know the future. Like Malachei Hasharet. Says the Gemara, what? Yodin sarkadatach. They know the future. Nobody knows the future. The only being that knows the future is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even the Malachim don't know the future. The Gemara says, "Shom'in ma'achorei ha'pargot." They have an inside information, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides what's going to be in future. Sometimes that is announced, ma'achorei ha'pargot, it is said, and they have access to those things that are said, ma'achorei ha'pargot. Says Gemara, El hashom'in ma'achorei ha'pargot ki malachei hasharet. So those are the three things they share with malachim. V'shelosha ki bnei adam, and the three elements that they have like human beings is ochlin v'shotin ki bnei adam. That they eat and drink like Bnei Adam. Now, the Ramban writes that the Shedim are created just like we are created from the four elements of Esh, Ruach, Afar, and Mayim. The Shedim also are created from the four elements, but only two of the four. They are from Ruach and from Esh. So they're a little different, and that makes the differences that they have with us, and hence what they eat is not necessarily the machal adam, is not necessarily as hevel ha'esh and the edim of mayim, because those are the elements that they need from their creation. But at the end of the day, they ingest food, physical food, like human beings. Harin v'ravin, they procreate like bnei adam. Umetim kibnei adam, and they also have a certain lifespan. They have a life expectancy. Kibnei adam. Now, their life expectancy is not necessarily like bnei adam, because you have many. This is a whole topic by itself about the life and legacy of shedim. We have certain ones that's, for instance, the Gemara in Gittin talks about Ashmedai was the king of some sort of king of the Shedim in the time of Shlomo Melech, and the Gemara talks about him hundreds of years later as well. The Gemara that talks about Zugot and mentions that in the time of Amuraim already and Tanaim, the king of Zugot was Ashmedai. So this is a span of many hundreds of years. Maybe over 1,000 years, well over 1,000 years for one of them. So now there are those early sources of the Kadmonim that talk about Shema, says not all of them live a long life like that, but those famous ones, which again, because of their longer life, they could be famous. They live a much longer life. But again, we mentioned before, however, Rambam understands all these Gemarot, that we have explicit Gemarot about Shedim. Rambam did not believe in, one of the things that he did not believe in was the concept of Shedim. So says the Gemara.
How much Hashem made Shedim? I mean, I know that it goes against.
So the Mishnah speaks about this in Kavod of things that were created, Yoshi, Ben Hashmashot, and so on and so forth. That gets into a deeper concept of why and how.
Are they physical or spiritual? Both?
They are, again, this is exactly what the Gemara is discussing here, that they have certain element of spirituality, like the Malachim, that does not fit the boundaries of our physical life. And there are certain things that are like us, basically, they share with Bnei Adam. Says the Gemara, Shisha Dvarim Nemru B'Bnei Adam, and 6 things about human beings, Shlosha K'Malachei Hasharet, Shlosha K'Behema. That 3 of them are like Malachim, 3 of them are like Behema. Shlosha K'Malachei Hasharet, the things that we share with Malachim, Yesh Lahem Dat K'Malachei Hasharet, we have Dat, we have intellect and knowledge, like Malachei Hasharet, U'Malachim B'Koma Zekufa, we walk straight, standing up, like Malachei Hasharet, unlike the rest of the animal kingdom, that they do not, and Mesaprim B'Lashon HaKodesh K'Malachei Hasharet, we speak Lashon HaKodesh like Malachei Hasharet, because Malachei Hasharet, well, depending on how you understand it, either only speaking Lashon HaKodesh or they don't reckon with certain other languages and so on. And we have the power of speech as well, not necessarily only Lashon HaKodesh, but we have the power of speech like Malachei Hasharet. It says the Gemara, the 3 things we have like Behema, last narrow line, Ochlin v'shotin k'Behema, Uparin v'ravin k'Behema, they eat and drink like Behema. The Malachim do not eat or drink. Now, you'll say the Gemara says about man, lechem shemalachei lechem abirim achal ish, and the Gemara dashes lechem shemalachei hasharet nizonin bo. The lechem, the man was like a lechem that malachei hasharet use. So what we just said that they don't eat. So what it means is the Ramban actually writes that man was not a physical food, was an encapsulated spiritual energy, and therefore he didn't have waste. Any waste did not need to go to bathroom afterwards, because this was the shefa. The Malachei Hasharet also needs shefa to continue existing. Everything that exists needs continuous shefa, and man was encapsulated shefa. Therefore, it was the same material that sustains Malachei Hasharet. By the way, that's why the Ramban writes that if me and you would eat man, what would have happened? Nothing. We would not be able to be sustained from man unless you have attained a certain high level of Kedusha, which the Ramban writes the Jews attained that level by Mavar Hayam, by going through the Yam Suf and experiencing the high levels of prophecy, of Ra'ata Shifcha Alayam, Ma'ashelo Ra'a Yecheskel Ben Buzi, that even a maidservant experienced levels of prophecy throughout the going through the sea, that even Yecheskel, or Ma'aseh Merkava fame that we just had, did not experience. That is what elevated their level spiritually to be on a high platform that they could be nizon and sustained from encapsulated shefa called man. Says the Gemara, so we procreate like animals, and motzin rei kebema, use the bathroom like the behema does. Kol hamistakel, so those are the 6 things about the Shedim, 6 things about Bnei Adam. Says the Gemara, Kol hamistakel bedalet devarim ratui lo shlo ba'alei olam. If a person would look at 4 things, anyone that inquires about 4 things, the Mishnah said it would have been better for him not to be born. So says the Gemara, the question that Gemara is going to ask is on the one of those 4. What are the 4? Male mala, male mata, male fani, male achor. So the Gemara says, I understand 3 out of 4. One of them I have a problem. Bishlama male mala, male mata, male achor. I understand that you cannot inquire about what's above, what's beneath, and what is going to happen in future afterwards. Well, who cares about what happened prior? What happened before? Who cares about that? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, the Amri Tarvaihu, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, both of them say, Mashal lemelech basar v'dam. It's an example, a mashal to a king basar v'dam. Sha'amar la'avadav, benuli paltrin gadol al ashba. You see this pile of garbage? Go build a massive palace for me on top of the pile of the garbage. In other words, the place of the palace prior to the palace was a dump. And he says, clean this up and make me a palace. Now, if you want to get the address for the palace of the king doesn't want people to say on Google Map the garbage dump, right? It's not. So says the Gemara, Halchu banu lo, they went and they built it. Eretz shel melech. Hashem doesn't want, king doesn't want lehaskir shema ashpa. Doesn't want the people to associate the paltrin, the palace, with the ashpa. Now, of course, this is a very deep mashal. To explain it with the world it needs a lot of explanation. But whatever it was before the tohu vavohu, the void and the emptiness that was, why is that considered a proper example to the garbage dump? Is something that has to be discussed. But the Gemara is simply saying that going back to think what was beforehand is something that is beyond the scope of our understanding. It's like exempling the thing with the garbage dump. Of course, we know that prior, some basic things. We know that prior to the creation, everything was or in self. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is memaleh kol shmahan. Hashem is filled the not just the world but everything. And in order to create the possibility of a physical world, he had to go through the experience of what we call tzimtzum to create a halal, a void in the middle, and that would be serving as the platform of the creation. So why that is exactly the mashal of garbage dump is beyond our pay grade, at least for this shiur, and that's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara. Another thing that the Mishnah said that would be better for a person not to be born is a person that doesn't have kavod and doesn't have doesn't care about the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And says the Gemara, Mahi, what is this? What's a person that doesn't care about the kavod of Hashem? Rabbi Abba Amar, Zeh mistakel bekeshet. This is a person that gazes at keshet, which means a rainbow. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Zeh over avera beseter. Rabbi Yosef says that this is a person that does an avera, he sins in private, when nobody is looking. So says the Gemara is going to challenge both of this. Hamistakel bekeshet, mistakel bekeshet, dichtiv kemar'ei hakeshet asher yeh ba'anan b'yom hakeshet. Because in Pasuk in Yecheskel, and this is the first parak of Yecheskel, which we mentioned is Ma'aseh Merkava, basically. It says that the mar'eh kavod Hashem, the sight of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavod is kemar'eh hakeshet asher yeh b'yom hageshet. Like the scene of the rainbow that you see in the day of rain. Ken mar'eh hanogah, that is the mar'eh hanogah, the light surrounding the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Saviv hu mar'eh demut kavod Hashem. So you see, there is some sort of mar'eh kavod Hashem in the keshet, and to gaze at that is considered a disrespect. Now, we know the Shulchan Aruch says you're not supposed to look at the keshet at a rainbow when there is. You say a bracha, and the reason that you don't look at it, one is, of course, this explicit Gemara, and the other one is because it is the sign of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's lack of satisfaction with the world, because Hashem made a brit that when is it that we, us, the people, see the keshet? When he is upset, he made a brit, a covenant that he's no longer going to destroy the entire humanity like he did by Men Noach. And after Noach came out, it was keshet as a sign, right? Kashti ba'anan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the keshet in the anan as a reminder that Hashem has taken an oath not to destroy humanity. So therefore, you don't want to look at it, you make a bracha, then you realize that there is one, and there's a whole machloket whether or not you should tell other people there is keshet over here for them to say the bracha and so on. But nevertheless, you see from the pasuk in Yechezkel that there is some manifestation of kavod Hashem in the image of a keshet. So says the Gemara, Ken mar'eh הנוגה סביב, הוא מראה דמות כבוד השם. רב יוסף אמר, זה העובר עבירה בסתר. Rabbi Yosef, who says that someone that doesn't care about the kavod of Hashem is someone that does avera beseter, hiddenly does averot, says Gemara, Rabbi Yitzchak. That's like Rabbi Yitzchak. Dama Rabbi Yitzchak, kol ha'over avera beseter, anyone that goes in hiding and does an avera, כאילו דוחק רגלי שכינה. Is like he's pushing away רגלי שכינה, the feet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. שנאמר, כה אמר השם השמיים כסאי והארץ אדום רגלי, that we had this pasuk before that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, my chariot is in heaven, and my resting place for the foot rest, so to speak, is haaretz adom raglai. So therefore, whatever this means, the haaretz adom raglai, the earth that we live in is the makom of raglei shekhinah. So if you deny the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees everything, and you think you're going to go into a hiding place and say, mi ar'eni, who is going to see me, and do something that you would not have done in public, says the Gemara, you're pushing away the existence of Shekhinah as if you say that you don't agree that Shekhinah exists all over the place. Says the Gemara, Eni, is that correct? Ve'ha'amar, Rabbi Ilach, don't we know that Rabbi Ilach Zaken said, Im ro'eh adam she'isro mitkaber alav, if a person sees that his Yetzirah is defeating him, is mitkaber, he can't really hold strong in front of Yetzirah, preventing himself from Averam. Yelech lemakom she'en makirin oto. He should go to a place that nobody knows him. Ve'yilbash chorin, he should wear dark garments. This was the sign of Avelut back in the day, and also psychologically calms a person's mind. Ve'yilbash chorin, v'yatef shchorin. He should wrap himself in shchorin, wear shchorin, ve'yaseh ma sheribo chafez, and do whatever it is that he can't control himself from doing. And he should not do chilul Shem Shamayim. He should not do a chilul Hashem befarhesia. At least go somewhere beseter that nobody knows. So he seems to be saying that you are doing avera beseter. Here you're telling me that it would be better for him not to be created if he does avera beseter. And then Rabbi Ilaz Zaken darshins that if you can't not do avera, at least go to a place that nobody knows you. So, right? Somebody said, I went to this place and I found all my best friends there, right? So you go at least to a place that nobody knows you, and you do avera beseter. It's better than doing avera befaresia. So is it better to do avera beseter, or is it better not to do avera beseter, do it befaresia, because at least you're not denying the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What are you going in hiding? As if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not seeing in the hiding place? So says the Gemara lo kasha. It's not the question. Said 99.9999% of the time, a person could be kofeder yetzirah. They could control themselves. So, of course, you should not be giving into yetzirah. But if there is a situation, if there is a case that a person can't control himself at all, so this is better not to at least be a public chilul Hashem. It's not that you're denying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees you. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees you, but at least you don't want to be mechalel Shem Shamayim berabim. On top of the fact that you're doing an avera, also be a chilul Hashem. That you don't want to do. I would add to this that perhaps when a person stops himself for 5 minutes and says, okay, I'm going to go to the next city or to somewhere else to do the avera. By the time he he's going to change to shechorim and mitatef shchorim. Then by that time you find that actually you can control yourself. Most of the times, the urgency of Averah is just a facade that the Yitzhak causes for a person. You give it 5 minutes, right? You say, I'm going to go to Amud Yomi, and then I'm going to do the Averah afterwards. By the time you come and you wait 5 minutes, this is the story from the Stipler Gaon, that when he was in the Russian army, he was drafted to the army, he had to stay post one Friday night at Shabbat, and the Russian winter nights, many degrees -0. And they had a coat made specifically for this post of guarding 8 hours in the cold of night. That was not a regular coat. It was many layers to just survive the night, standing there in the cold. And the guy that finished the post before him had hung this coat on a branch in the tree for him to come take it, for the next guy to come take it. So the tree is a muktzeh. Anything that's hanging directly on the tree is muktzeh. So the Stipler comes and he sees this and says, well, it's muktzeh. But then he says, look, it's sakarat nefashot. I'm going to do it in 5 minutes. 5 minutes I could survive, right? In 5 minutes I'm going to take it, right? Because that's going to be already a sorech. In 5 minutes, he said, well, it's not that cold. 5 more minutes, right? I'll take it in 5 minutes. And like this, 5 minutes, he went through the entire post without having to wear it. And he says, it's all right if I would say in the beginning, I'm not going to wear it. Of course, if it was a real sakara, he would have worn it. It's just mukteh rabbanan. But he felt that he was good and didn't get sick afterwards, Baruch Hashem. But the Maaseh, if he would have said in the very beginning, I'm not, the Yetzirah would have defeated him, right? But sometimes all it takes is 5 minutes, right? And until you're mitatef shchorim and you are lovesh shchorim and you go somewhere else, then you see, you muster enough courage and power to defeat the Yetzirah.